Hey, we're live.
Okay. Well, greetings. This is our monthly town hall meeting, but we are moving towards, and sorry, I'm going to get lots of things wrong. You should just correct me.
Usually
We are,
we have town halls every 2 weeks, so twice a
this is
month.
our bi-weekly town hall meeting. It didn't sound right when I said it the first time. But we are moving towards a weekly meeting, and there are a number of changes. One of which is that as of today, Jeremy Simon, who has been with us since the very early days, is no longer moderating or playing a very active role in. Um, yeah, excuse me, I'm distracted because I think I'm in the wrong Zoom meeting. I see. I was looking at. Hello. Okay. Sorry. Um, Jeremy is no longer playing an active role, although his company 3D Universe is continuing to supply and the planning to replenish the stock of kits that are being done. And so for the moment, the town hall meetings will be weekly. They're going to include some of the activities that used to be in monthly meetings, education and bionics and so on, if for example, Vivek's schedule can accommodate. And we've talked about shifting the day, perhaps. The point is, it is a new era, but we're in very good shape because we have the people who are present today have become sort of regulars, and there are some really exciting developments going on. So I actually am going to ask Madison and Jonathan and Sarah in that order to introduce themselves and talk about their roles. And we can talk a little bit, and Vivek, of course, and talk a little bit about beginning this discussion of how we can use this as an opportunity to think freshly and restructure some of what e-NABLE has been doing. So I'm John Schull. I'm co-founder of e-NABLE almost 10 years ago. I am a biological psychologist by training. I was a scientist once upon a time. Then I became a technologist and innovator and professor. Then I became the accidental co-founder of e-NABLE, and now I continue to work on e-NABLE as well as on the Eco Restoration Alliance. And as a matter of fact, a little bit later in this session, I'm going to show you a video which for the first time brings together 3D printed prosthetics and eco restoration. But that's me. Madison, do you want to talk about you and your role and how it is evolving?
Sure. Hi, I'm Madison Bondoc. Some background from me is I was a chemical engineer at some point, but I, by trade, am a biomedical engineer. I'm currently a clinical engineer slash government contractor. I've been with e-NABLE since 2019. I started just as a volunteer, and then just by circumstances, adopted what was formerly known as e-NABLE Odenton and made it kind of my own chapter, e-NABLE DC. So we've dealt with projects, including e-NABLE prosthetics, but also tapped into the assistive devices. My role started kind of evolving over the years, guiding future e-NABLE chapter leaders, for example, Arjun, who is the chapter leader of Jackson Reed High School, yeah, e-NABLE Jackson Reed at Jackson Reed High School, who, they're active and thriving and doing a lot of amazing projects. I just touched base with him. But, my role is just, and also, supporting more the e-NABLE outreach efforts. So that's kind of where my role looks like it's moving towards. And I'm, hoping to support, um, you know, e-NABLE chapters with the outreach aspect. Thank you.
Thank you. Um, you might want to talk a little bit more about this specific project with the filmmakers and how that shows how things are tying together and suggests that there may be a burst of visibility for e-NABLE in the future.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, speaking of Arjun and Enable Jackson Reed, there's an opportunity for them to kind of be the face of Enable for this documentary called Driving Mrs. M. So she's a local teacher from Baltimore who is quadriplegic. And, we've been in contact with Connie and Masha, the directors who've been filming Mrs. M for over like 10 years. And, they're at a point where, they're finalizing the editing, but, we connected and there's an opportunity to not only share Mrs. M's story, but her to share Enable and kind of inspire the youth and future Enable volunteers and generations. So it's in the works, but it looks like Arjun and Enable Jackson Reed chapter will be part of that ending. So really excited to be a part of that and support that. So that will be in the horizon. But I think it'll just be a great opportunity to, expand our reach and share our mission to whoever this film reaches. So that's, I think, still,
Cool.
pending. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Okay, cool. Uh, Jonathan.
Hi, so if I haven't met you guys, my name's Jonathan Hogeveen. I'm a manufacturing engineer, so I came from kind of the technical side of stuff. I've been playing with additive manufacturing for a good decade, um, alongside with pretty heavy into the CAD and design industries. Um, so I found out about Enable about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years. I kind of stepped in as a volunteer and then kind of moved into a heavily involved volunteer. So I started taking on a little bit of the case facilitation. I took over like the badge moderation for the hub, and just a couple other things, and I'm happy to be here.
Great. Thank you. Vivek.
Hi everyone, I'm Vivek Badami. I've been an e-NABLE volunteer since about 2001, I think. And I mean, my background is in controls and sensors and engineering, mostly energy, uh, aircraft engines, and so on. I worked for a couple of computer companies in Boston, and then I worked for GE for about 35 years in their R&D lab and power and aviation. And I retired in 2020, and I was looking for something useful to do. And I ran across e-NABLE, and it had been sort of helping. I'm heading up this bionic group we have. It's a small slice of e-NABLE, and we try to get speakers who are looking at low-cost bionic hands, not the $60,000 versions, but a little cheaper and more affordable. So in fact, we have a bionic team. A bionic presentation today at 12 o'clock. So if you want to hang around, it looks very interesting. And
Does indeed.
I live near Boston, uh, just in terms of locating me. Thanks.
Thank you. And that is at 12 o'clock, and it's on
12
the
today.
Enable calendar, so ably maintained by Sarah, who will now introduce herself.
Hi, I am Sarah. In October 2022, I took over for Ben Rubin, and I've been a coordinator with e-NABLE, so I help to organize our monthly meeting schedule, and all of our themed meetings each month. So we have bionic design and healthcare, education and new members, and meetings for chapter leaders. And I also do a lot of management on the hub, so I answer people's questions there, and if I don't know the answer, I know who does. So and right now I'm working on collecting case requests so that we can do a better job of monitoring requests for devices and matching people with volunteers. And I just went through all of our, this was a few months ago, our chapters on the map to make sure that everyone that's listed is still active. And Jonathan has been doing a great job of keeping it up to date. And I'm also soon going to be working on a project to kind of document the history of e-NABLE and the mission to help increase our visibility. I'm a journalist, so I work part-time for e-NABLE and part-time as a freelance journalist, and I'm happy to be here. So
Great, thank you. And so this is an opportunity to meet some new people, Arya Sira and Hasini Pillai. And while they are finding their mute buttons, hello, Hasini.
Hi,
Where do you?
I'm a high school student in the US. I live in Texas, and I'm really interested in 3D modeling, 3D prosthetics. I came across e-NABLE a couple months ago, and me and my friend Arya were trying to start printing and, use the web and get into it. So we're trying to learn more in the next couple months, and that's why we joined.
That's fantastic. You have some experience with 3D printing at your high school?
No, we don't exactly have a 3D printing course. So we're taking one online to learn more about CAD and Fusion and just kind of learn more about the softwares. We have engineering courses at my school that we've taken in the past, but that's pretty much it.
Okay, cool. Thank you for joining us. And so you have not yet have you made any e-NABLE devices?
No, not yet. We're trying to learn more and just thoroughly plan before we start printing, which we're going to try to start printing in the next month or so, and see how that goes because it's our first time. So,
Sure. All right, great. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for coming.
thank you.
And Arya,
Hi,
are you there?
hi. My name's Arya. I'm also a high school student in Texas. So we were just trying to learn more about e-NABLE and hopefully start printing soon.
Okay. So, let me give a little bit of background on e-NABLE for Arya and Hasini, and for all of us as we sort of think about the future. e-NABLE started at that moment when 3D printers were suddenly becoming available to consumers, and there was a great deal of excitement around them, and we sort of looked into a perfect storm of goodwill and excitement about a global community which we created of volunteers who had 3D printers and wanted to make upper limb prosthetics based on an early and very now crude model that was developed by Ivan Owen, one of the co-founders of e-NABLE, and a South African carpenter who had lost his fingers in a shop accident. e-NABLE grew on a couple of other internet phenomena that were taking off at the time. Google, what was it even called? The Google social network, which doesn't even exist anymore, but in which we went from 18 people on the day when I posted a message on the internet to 10,000 people had signed up. The other internet phenomenon besides the social network was YouTube, because there was a YouTube video describing the work of Ivan Owen and the South African carpenter, and I invented e-NABLE on the spot, describing it as a global volunteer network based on an infrastructure of internet coordination, 3D printing, and goodwill. And when that video went viral, so did the concept of e-NABLE. And so the next stage was that there were all sorts of videos from all over the world showing cute kids with 3D printed prosthetics that came from this mysterious group of volunteers on the internet. And wasn't it all wonderful? And that led more and more people to sign on board, saying, I want to be a part of this. And we've gradually moved from several platforms, from the Google Groups to an intermediate platform, and then to hub.enable.org. And Hasini and Arya, have you signed into hub.enable.org and introduced yourselves?
Yes, we both created accounts last week.
Great. Congratulations. Well, listen, you should say hello, say a little bit about where you're at, what you're doing. And if you have any questions, well, you can certainly ask them here, but you'll find that if you ask them there, you also get feedback from all sorts of people who haven't been doing this for 10 years and are in the same boat as you, whatever boat that happens to be, and get peer support and begin offering peer support. And simply asking questions is itself a form of peer support, because it gives us indications as to what the needs are and how we can address them. Sarah and Jonathan monitor the hub quite regularly. I think Madison does too. And if you post something and you don't hear anything in return, you should feel really free to write directly to me or to them. And you can write them directly through the hub. And you can find my email in various places also. Over the years, certain patterns have developed in e-NABLE. And I'm going over this partly because I think it may be time for some new patterns to develop afresh. One pattern, which is now well established, is that e-NABLE is a distributed duocracy. It is a distributed network of chapters and individuals who all take it upon themselves to say, this is really cool, I'm going to do it, and they do it their own way. In some cases, that's really quite necessary and strategic, because the laws and the regulations and the insurance policies around prosthetics and assistive technologies are different from country to country. And so in some places, like Brazil and Honduras and Thailand, the e-NABLE chapters have actually become recognized collaborators with the medical infrastructures of their respective countries. In Brazil, I think there are even some formal laws that were created in order to facilitate the assignment of device creation gigs to e-NABLE volunteers by prosthetists, certified prosthetists in Brazil. In Thailand, there's a hospital sponsored by the Princess of Thailand, which was built originally to support people with Graves' disease, which used to be called leprosy. The hospital is next door to a colony that was created to accommodate people with leprosy at the time. And now it's a full-fledged village with the children and grandchildren of those now elderly people who lost limbs during the peak of leprosy before it was clear how to treat it. And many of them now have 3D printed prosthetics, including some variations on devices that were developed there by e-NABLE Thailand. In the United States, where Madison is closely connected with a chapter, I used to run a chapter in a school here in Rochester. For all we know, Arya and Hasini will have a chapter or find another chapter in Texas. Many of the chapters are affiliated with schools. And that brings me to a few other patterns. In America, I would say schools and universities make up probably half or more of the e-NABLE chapters. There are also a number which are associated with schools through FIRST robotics clubs, and I want to circle back to talk about some interesting developments there. The other channel in North America, the other pattern in North America worth talking about is the pattern that, because of the regulations and because of the insurance system and the availability of healthcare or not, we have far more e-NABLE want to help volunteers than we have identified want to get hand recipients. Which, of course, is a good thing for the world, but a challenge for our particular group, because it suggests that we have people who are eager to help and don't have an outlet yet. There are a couple of solutions to that problem, and Arya and Hasini, you're probably about to come up against them. So let me give you a briefing on this. One solution, which is a really good and meaningful and learningful thing to do, is to reach out to local schools and hospitals and organizations that you may know about and say, hey, we're with an organization that you may well have heard of by now. Also reach out to local prosthetists, but I wouldn't advise that you do that yet, Arya and Hasini. But reaching out to the schools and say, do you know anyone, particularly children, who have got limb differences and might be interested in collaborating with us as co-pilots as we learn how to make these devices? It gives you an opportunity to find out what the needs actually are, often to make presentations at the schools as inspiring high school students doing meaningful stuff. And while you think you're very early on, there are presentation materials and other materials that Madison can help you find that you can use to put together a nice little visiting kit and to do outreach in your own community. We are here to help and guide you in that regard. If you know people personally, you're already well prepared to say, I'm new here, I don't know what I'm doing, but there are good people who've done it and we'd like to get started. Do you know people in our community who might be interested in working with us? If you don't already have a personal relationship with them, then getting some of these materials and thinking through who you're going to reach out to and how to reach out would be a good idea. Another thing you will do, however, is you will listen very carefully. We are a global network of volunteers who are using 3D printers to help people who are underserved by available services. That goes way beyond prosthetics. e-NABLE volunteers, just because of the history I gave you, are typically come our way because they heard about and they've seen these wonderful 3D printed prosthetics. But there are all sorts of other things 3D printers can be used for to create valuable tools that will help people just as deserving and just as adorable as the little kids you see with their mechanical hands. You should look for the phrase assistive devices. You should look at the phrase at the organization called Makers Making Change, who has a repository of assistive devices like jar openers or cup holders that make it easy to attach coffee cups to wheelchairs or any other things. And there's an opportunity to design new solutions if you find someone, and here you would be reaching out to physical therapists or a school that specializes in rehabilitation or other groups of that sort. And you'll find that having a bright person to think through a solution to an unsolved problem is a really great design and outreach program. There was a school in New England, I'm sure there still is now, but I'm thinking of one in particular that had elementary school kids who went to a seniors and old age home just to interview the people living in the old age home to say, what kinds of challenges do you have? It turned out some of them had a lot of trouble holding the cards that they would use to play bridge with other people in the old age home because of arthritis. Great. The kids figured out a number of solutions, some of which involved 3D printing, some of which involved other things. And it was now easier for these people to play bridge or to hold their coffee cups or to do other things that come along with being in your 80s or 90s. And the truth is, it was as meaningful and important for the relationships that were developed as it was for the devices that were provided. So that's another emerging pattern, is we have come to recognize that the relationships and the fact that there are people who care and are creative and resourceful who are available to help is a really big part of the e-NABLE experience, e-NABLE culture, and the contribution that we make. Which to say, Arya and Hasini and the rest of us, we all have opportunities to look for new ways of being helpful. They may or may not involve prosthetics. They may or may not involve 3D printing, but they often involve creativity, design, caring, and relationship building. I saw recently, by the way, an e-NABLE group that was offering their services using 3D printers to print readable Braille text using the printer as a way of making textured Braille documents. And so there's another example and another opportunity to think about reaching out to a school for the blind, which probably exists in a city near you, and see whether they have that need. They might even have 3D printers, et cetera. So that's the second approach to being able to satisfy your need, not just to do interesting things with 3D printers, but to have people you can benefit. And the third way is to get involved in a new initiative, which is international, which is dealing with the circumstance which is the opposite of the American experience. In places like Uganda, they have far more people who want devices than there are people who know how to make devices. And we have a new relationship now in Uganda with an organization called, I think it's called World Unity Africa. Peter Odama is the person. If you look on the Hub for Uganda project, you'll find some background to it. And I will now show you a video of the very first case of several interesting things. So let me share my screen. Let me find the screen share button, which is always in a different place. Okay. Here we go. Here is the video. So what you have here is there we go. So what you're seeing here is Peter Odama on the left, a Kwawu arm socket 3D printed by the first robotics team in Saratoga, California. The Kwawu arm has been connected to an adapted gripper hand, which has got silicone embedded on the inside, so it's got a better grip. And this is a first presentation, a first test of that with a Ugandan worker. And if the video were to play, I could show you this. Apparently sideways. Can I rotate it? I'm sorry. Let me just work through this and see what we got here. Too many windows. Too much preparation. Okay, what about this one? All right, this will illustrate the device itself. If only it would play. Hang on, let me just try closing this and reopening it. QuickTime. File. Open recent. Here is a single video. Is not actually playing. Okay, at least I can jump. So here you see the arm, here you see the hand, here you see the hoe. Here you see the arm, hand, and hoe working together on a project to repair the degraded soil in Uganda. This is my great breakthrough, a connection between e-NABLE prosthetics and ecosystem restoration. And while he's currently struggling with some gripping issues, they've already made great progress on that. So I'm not going to try to play more videos because I'm having trouble with that, but let me say, here's a situation. The Saratoga e-NABLE chapter has done what really stellar chapters do, which is that they've established an outreach connection to some people who need devices. They have found that the need is for robust devices that are relatively simple. And so they adapted the gripper hand, which is not the Phoenix, but the one which, frankly, I would recommend to start with. It has one moving part, a spring-loaded thumb. It looks more natural than a Phoenix device, for example, or some of the other devices. It's relatively easy to print. They attached it to the Quabu arm, and they have now done a fundraiser. They've raised a total of $13,000, which they've used to ship devices to Odama in Uganda, and they are now beginning to distribute them and provide really good feedback on what needs to be adjusted. In this particular case, they found that the angle at which you hold a hoe doesn't match the angle of the wrist attached to the arm. And so they're now working on an adjustable wrist and a better grip so that the hand will remain aligned with the hoe as they use it in practice. This is exactly what's actually involved. Another pattern that I wanted to mention is that we find that you don't just print a device, deliver it, and forget it. You help fit it and you help adjust it, and then you identify challenges that result and remain, and then you try to come up with solutions to those challenges. The Saratoga group, working with Peter Odama in Uganda, is now doing a terrific job of that sort. And they recently sent me a proposal to take devices out into the country, 2 and 3 and 4 hours from Kampala, and begin fitting the 12 devices they have already received from Saratoga and the, I think, 30 more devices that are currently working their way to Saratoga, working their way to Uganda from Saratoga. This is a project I think the American community should get on board with. It's a rare case in the 10 years of e-NABLE when we have a device that's well suited to the population, a group that has already done some really good innovation towards making a more robust device, a recipient agency which has connections to the hospitals that is providing us with really good feedback on the devices and is prepared to go out to identified recipients, give them the devices, get pictures, and so on. So there are two ways this group. Yes, Vivek, please.
Yes, sorry, I'll forget my question. in 10 seconds. So how we just go onto the website, this World Action Fund website that Jonathan had sent a link on, and send them a message, or how do we, did you get past the export issue? We used to have these
Yes,
problems with, okay,
yes, they have
okay,
managed. I think they're just using UPS, but they have successfully gotten these to ship through. There are more in the pipeline.
okay,
I think if you go onto the hub and don't just look at World Action Fund, but on the hub, look for, quote, Uganda Project. And the name, I think, is Anh Kwan, ANH. You will find that they've created a spreadsheet and they're now coordinating an opportunity for volunteers to make their particular device, their particular
good.
variation, and to get them sent over. But we,
Yeah,
dear members, yes,
I
does
did
that
do a
answer?
search on the, I did do a search on the Uganda project, but I didn't seem to find it, but I'll look it up later. I
Okay.
don't want to hold you up. Yep.
Okay. And Sarah is probably looking now to try to find that information. And Sarah, let's make this more visible, because I've actually been telling this shaggy dog story for a reason. Uh, what do we call this group now? Not the steering committee. The e-NABLE Town Hall is the closest thing we have to a staff and executive board here. And we are authorized to make grants from the e-NABLE Fund of up to $1,000 if we think it's a good idea. The Saratoga group, as I said, has already raised and sent $13,000 to Uganda. And we're beginning to see really interesting feedback and results from that. I know I have in my hands a larger proposal of $4,000 to send a bunch of people out to the road. I'm coaching them through creating a Lumio proposal that the community can vote on, and that will also raise the visibility of the project. But while I've known about this project for a couple of months, I am now comfortable suggesting that we send a goodwill donation of $1,000 now in order to show them that we're not only interested in giving them moral support and design support, but we really believe in what we're doing. And so I'd like a little bit of discussion, but I'm going to suggest that we use a show of hands to see whether we would like to send them a contribution and advance their efforts while they develop a proposal for a larger grant, which I think would become a real pipeline for all of us. Your hand went up, Vivek. Oh, that's thumbs up. You actually, I would like to invite a little bit of discussion before we actually take the vote, but I appreciate your support.
Yeah,
Sorry, need to jump the gun.
not ready to vote. I haven't actually met with them or seen them face to face, so I would, before I voted to send them funds, I would need to see a presentation for that from them and meet them and see. And I don't know that's great that there's a spreadsheet. I don't know where to look for that. I don't know
Okay.
where that is. So
I would
like to meet them and see their materials.
That's great. Would you be interested in well, I have several several recordings of conversations I've had with them. And it's a great time for them to give a presentation. So, point taken, and I think it's prudent and I think it's right. So at the next town hall meeting, and let's shift to talking about logistics, I'll see if I can get them to give a presentation. I think from today's vote, I can tell them that there's an easy $1,000 likely to occur if they impress whoever shows up as they have impressed me, and we'll do it that way. Does that sound right to everybody? Okay, I think that's great, but I do appreciate the enthusiasm. let's talk about timing. Today, Vivek, we're going to have a meeting in 15 minutes with your group. But Sarah suggested that Fridays are often a challenge, and maybe we should shift to Wednesdays at noon, which is, I'm double checking, but I believe that is an open slot on my calendar. Would that work for everybody?
It doesn't work for me, John. Wednesday is probably the worst day of the week for me.
Okay.
Wednesday noon specifically. But
All right. Well, that didn't work.
we
Let's
could
see if there
continue
is a
with the
convenient.
bionics. We could continue with the bionics as a separate meeting, unless you really need to club them together.
No, we don't really need to draw them together. That was Jeremy's suggestion last time.
Okay.
And I embraced it, but we don't have to do that. But let's just see if so. Thursdays at noon is equally good for me.
So
Does that
works for
become
me too.
unavailable? That's fine for you?
Yep.
Jonathan?
Yep.
Madison? Sarah?
Yes.
I think that's better. That will, as old timers know, I often am in a car on Fridays, beginning a weekend trip. So Thursday might be better anyway. And that will give us the option of having bionic or education meetings on a Thursday that are more likely to go. And
Yeah,
we
and
can,
Tainara, I think she wants to do her healthcare meetings on Thursdays too, so that actually maybe that could work for everyone.
all right, then we have actually resolved to change a 6 or 8 years tradition, which I think is a good thing.
Have to confirm with Ian.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so there are two action items that come out of this discussion. One is, Sarah, because this is what Sarah does, I will send you some background on the Uganda situation, including the right contacts, and I'll ask you to try to get them to come to a Thursday meeting, but I'll also give you these Fathom videos, and if they're not available, and yet you agree that the videos make it a strong case, maybe you and I can pick a few video clips that will allow us to show the world why it's so worthy for a quick 1,000 and perhaps a larger grant when they actually submit a proposal. Okay? So I'll send you the Uganda background, and then you'll try to arrange to have them come to a meeting.
Okay.
Good. The second action item is to make a big announcement on the hub about the change in our meeting tempo and time.
Well, I don't think it's ready for a hub announcement quite yet.
Until you check with Ian.
And Tainara, but to be clear, so the format for that, the themed meetings would be from 11 a.m. to 12, and then town halls from 12 to 12:30, or
Well, that is what we talked about,
or would it be or are meeting facilitators not available until 12, in which case the time slot would have to shift a little bit.
okay, why don't you look into that? We can do any of those things, but on Thursdays, well, actually, I'm looking now and I see that I do have a conflict with Thursdays at noon.
So could we do town halls from 11:30 to noon, followed by meetings from noon to 1?
Well, noon to 1, I do have
Yeah, so you wouldn't have to stay for the
I wouldn't have to be there for all of them.
Yeah.
So
Thursday is still a better day,
thinking
so let's do shift to Thursdays at 11. And we can explore the constraints.
Can we stuff all of that stuff into 1 hour, like the bionics and everything else that you want
The proposition on, I'm sorry to interrupt, David. The proposition
Oh,
on the
okay.
table, the proposition on the table is to have, for example, a bionic presentation connected to a town hall on one week, an education presentation attached to a town hall on another week, Pinara attached to a town hall on another week, and combine them and rotate them that way. We don't always need a full hour for town hall business. And if we're all together and it's on a weekly tempo, we thought it might be easier for people to align their calendars and make a point of showing up on a weekly basis. That's the proposition. But we're not deciding that right now. We're reviewing it, and we now know a little bit more about Thursday being our best candidate day.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just reviewing my little backgrounder on the state of e-NABLE, and I did want to talk a little bit about the e-NABLE fund. We have 80-some thousand dollars in the bank, thanks to a generous, no strings attached gift donation from Arrow Electronics Company, who said, "You guys are doing great things. We'd like to make you our poster child for 2024, I think it was." And we haven't spent that much of the money. We spend money in a variety of ways. And frankly, we should be spending more of it in the appropriate directions. One thing we do is we pay a small amount of money to Sarah for event coordination and for, during the week, capturing activity on the hub that's worth talking about during a town hall meeting. Secondly, we pay Madison a small amount for her work as sort of outreach and communications coordinator. We don't pay Jonathan, now that I think about it. And I don't think he's asked. And we have this interesting challenge that we are an all-volunteer organization, and we have never aspired to develop permanent staff, although this might be a moment to think about it, given that Jeremy has been permanent volunteer staff and he's no longer available. And we're always struggling to strike the right balance between volunteers who do what volunteers do because it is intrinsically rewarding, whatever it is, and for things that are not quite intrinsically rewarding but still need to happen. That's when it becomes possible and useful to pay people to do that essential work. With Jeremy's departure and my evolving, increasing investment in Eco Restoration Alliance, it's a good time to think about whether there are other opportunities to firm up our human or technical infrastructure. So, Jonathan, if you don't need it and don't want it, that's fine. On the other hand, if you would like some compensation in return for a little bit more a little bit more of our ability to say, Jonathan, this really needs to happen, and you're the guy, we're open to that discussion and negotiating what it would be. You've been with us for a long time, as have been Madison, and so we can, with some confidence, say this would be money well spent. We would have to write a proposal and get approval from the whole community, but we can do it. Which brings me to the second way our community spends money. That $80,000, with the exception of the $1,000 increments that this meeting is able to allocate, is controlled by the e-NABLE community using our facility on Lumio. If you look on the hub, if you look at our background information, if you ask someone, you will find a link to e-NABLEO. I think it's e-NABLEO.lumio.com, which is a site where we put up proposals for funding, there's I think it's 10-day discussion period during which people make comments that will typically improve the quality of the proposal and help clarify what is being proposed to do and for what money and what benefit it will have to the various recipients or community. And then the community votes. And if there is near consensus, and if I remember correctly, that means if there is 80% support and at least 18 votes, it's something like that, the proposal passes. And then e-NABLE.org LLC, a 501c3 nonprofit, of which I happen to be president, and Evan Blackman is the CFO, will actually allocate the money, and then we do taxation, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just a reminder that we have money, we have ambitions, and we have some ways of doing this kind of thing. And that's sort of also an overview of the e-NABLE governance, history, duocracy, and the financial situation. And the only changes that are afoot has to do with the notion that we're going to be, I think, more willing to spend money for appropriate purposes now that we're no longer parasitizing Jeremy's generous donations of time over the years. That we're shifting the town hall time to avoid weekend crunches. And I am hoping, but haven't demonstrated yet, that the development of the Uganda pipeline, and quite possibly the focus on this new device, which I think is more applicable to European and in particular African and South American cases, may become a new standard that may open the possibility for increased support, increased opportunities to print and ship for e-NABLE volunteers. And because the biggest problem facing American volunteers, is the fact that they don't have an outlet for their intentions, I'm going to suggest that while we typically don't provide grants to aid individual chapters, that's not a policy, but it's a norm. This may be a particular case where it's going to go to an organization in Uganda benefiting the particular people in that location, but it becomes an opportunity that will open up activity for e-NABLE chapters all over the world. And if it works, it becomes a model for how we can enhance our global contribution by developing these pipelines that may cross continents and cultures. This concludes my peroration on e-NABLE, past, present, and possible future. I wonder if there's any discussion or comments people may have, or things that I've forgotten to talk about.
I don't think we have a lot of time for discussion. I'm sorry, I have to open the bionic design meeting. So I think we have
Okay.
1 minute. We have 1 minute if anyone wants to say
All right, then.
to wrap up.
Then if you have those comments and questions, why don't you write them up, and they will become an agenda for the next meeting when we actually will begin following through on these preliminary thoughts. Okay,
Okay.
Sarah? Okay. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I feel very good about being the guy in the cockpit, given that I'm surrounded by present company, and given that new people like Arya and Hassini are showing up and giving us an opportunity to review things that some of us take for granted and some of us may not have heard before. So we now get to go to the bionic meeting, where, by the way, there's a really interesting new device and new volunteer taking an innovative approach. And we will see you all at our next town hall meeting, which is when, Sarah? Are we still on we're on the bi-weekly schedule
Yes, that
until
will be
we make
the
our
fir-
change of